Hi guys, this is Cindy with Easy Sea Productions. Welcome to my channel. Today is our daily update with the Rattlesnake Ridge out of Yakima, Washington. Today is February 1st, 2018, and let me first say that I want to apologize for yesterday. I just had many mixed emotions in regards to a news article that came out and the fact that the third-party geologist data report was out. We were excited about that. I was supposed to come back on last night, but I decided, okay, let's just take a break. Let's reflect on what's being said or what's on the report. And my geologist was able to go through that, printed it out, and if you stay tuned and you want to see or hear what's on that report, you can go about it two ways. You can go through the video details today and click on the link where you'll find the PDF file for that report, or stay tuned and hear my geologist talk about what's on that report. The good thing is we're excited that they were including areas that we've been looking at, areas that we have been monitoring. So this is really exciting. All right, so a couple of things I want to talk about is in regards to yesterday's press conference. We had a press conference yesterday, and my geologist and I watched it. Okay, so I'm going to bring up some key points that some of the statements were made. I do have my notes in front of me because I want to make sure I'm just telling you what they mentioned or what they talked about. Okay, so first of all, let's see, Department of Transportation, DNR, and the Yakima Valley Emergency Management Team was there. And they first talked about the slide. The slide is still moving at about 1.7 feet per week. Okay. And then DOT talked about the report. So right now, their DNR is monitoring the site. The third-party geologists went in there, did their research, and they're gone. They provided the report. So right now, DNR is the one that's going to be doing the monitoring. And it seems accurate up to this point. Okay. Second, they stated that there's a low probability of rapid failure to the south, and that the slide will continue to act in a slow, systematic manner, or creeping. Okay, so it's going slow, still moving, but they don't think it's going to be rapid. Okay, another point that they brought up, or a statement that they made, is it's fairly improbable that large failures will impact the residents, I-82 in the Yakima River. So he's explaining that they don't see large slides or impacts to the southwest area, or actually reaching the residents' homes. Okay. And four. There wasn't a credible mechanism to suggest large-scale failures directly to the west. Okay? So they don't see anything that would be happening, large-scale failures to the west. Okay? And what else? Okay, so about two more things. They stated that it's fairly probable that rock falls will continue in a small scale. And they feel confident that the boxes, the Connex boxes, will be able to capture most of the, the small rock falls, if there's any on that side. But it will continue on the southwest area. Okay. And then one reporter did ask one question, which was great, right? They asked, okay, so what does this mean for the residents, the evacuated residents off of Thorpe Road? What does this mean? The Yakima Valley Emergency Management Team replied that they will look at the evacuation plan. Okay? All right. Today, the newspaper posted, residents can go back home. Okay? So I went ahead and sent a message to the Yakima Valley Emergency Management Team, and they replied a while ago. I wanted to know what is it turns out they're going to be on evacuation level 1. So I sent that question to the team, and they replied stating that the residents are aware of some type of danger, an event that will take place that could put their lives in danger. So they need to be constantly prepared to evacuate at any sign of movement, and they'll be notified. All right, so that's it for now. Go ahead and write down your comments or questions, guys. I am telling you, this is based on the press conference. This is based on the report. Any thoughts or questions? Go ahead and write them down below. Like I mentioned, if you want to see and hear my geologist give more information on that report, go ahead and stay tuned. We appreciate you all for coming by and for subscribing and being with me through this journey. Okay? There's a lot more to discuss, but we'll cover it in the next coming days. I think that's it. Thank you, guys. This is Cindy with Easy C Productions. Please write down your thoughts in regards to the residents. Because personally, I live here. I drive by this area. I've been watching this area, right, with you guys. You guys have been following along with me. Personally, I live about 15 miles away. And when I hear rain, I picture the fissures, the crack. When I hear wind, I picture all that. So I would not be able to go there. I want to be able to go back. I know it's difficult because it's your home. It's difficult because there's nothing else around that's affordable. So they're facing some really challenging, difficult decisions. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to go out there. Yep. Because I want to know their thoughts. I'll probably introduce myself and probably do an interview somewhere else. But all right, I think that's it, guys. So stay tuned for a report from my geologist. Thank you to everyone for your heartfelt concerns, your comments, and your information on this. All right, this is Cindy with Easy C Productions.
Good day, everyone. We thank you for stopping back. My oh my, we've had some revelations, haven't we? As I'm sure Cindy has told you all, yes, some important information has come our way. And I think the best thing to do at this point is kind of review what the third-party geologist findings were, maybe go through it step by step, and maybe break it up into separate segments just so we can all get a good understanding of what's going on here. Generally speaking, I think we have some consensus in this. Yes, we might have some disagreements, but by and large, I think, you know, we've had some consensus of agreement on what we're seeing, the general environment, everything. So without further ado, let's just go right into it. I'm going to bypass the introduction, disclaimers, stuff in the beginning. Feel free to read it on your own. But it's all, you know, I'm going to skip to page 7 here and just get right into the landslide morphology as we know it. And as we alluded to here, the Rattlesnake Ridge landslide is geologically located within the Miocene Age Saddle Mountains basalt of the Columbia River Basalt Group. No surprises there. This is kind of important, specifically the basal shear surface, basal meaning the bottom. The basal shear surface of the slide mass has recently been reinterpreted as coinciding with the Sila sedimentary interbed that separates the two basalt flows. In the appendix of this report, and you can all read it for yourself, but in this appendix, that interbed would be right here, if you're looking at it. And it coincides with the landslide area right in there, separating this big mass from this little thin layer right here. Very good. Moving on. Now this is just overall. I mean, I don't want this to be misinterpreted as this particular area, because they say the Rattlesnake Hills, not the Rattlesnake Ridge. But the Rattlesnake Hills are formed by east-west trending asymmetrical anticline. What's an asymmetrical anticline? Okay, we're lucky. Bam. This is an asymmetrical anticline. When they say east-west, they're taking it off of this plane, which makes sense. I mean, this is obviously a much smaller version, no question about it. Just a road cut, but the same general geometry, asymmetrical, and for the sake of this exercise, pretty close to, looking like Rattlesnake Ridge, dip a little higher, nevertheless. But that, I wanted you to see one in nature, because it's very difficult to find an asymmetrical anticline that big in nature that you can just roll up and take a picture of. This is obviously just a road cut of that. Canadian Rockies, I believe. Moving on. The hills have steeper north-facing slopes, often with thrust faulting and shallow dipping south-facing dip slopes coincident with bedding. Where do we see that? We do see that. We haven't really alluded to this much, but I think we will get into as this time's going on. This is the northwest section of this landslide. The Rattlesnake portion being a little farther this way, but there's south-facing. That direction being south towards the landslide. Those are the beds south-facing. That's what they're talking about, I suspect. Moving on, and again, just to get into this Sila interbed, because I think it's important, and again, just the morphology of it. The Sila interbed represents an interflow period of approximately 1 million years, during which time sediments were deposited by fluvial processes on the topographic surface formed by the mantle of basalt. Okay. During this period, the ridges were subject to uplift. I think we've alluded to that, with the consequence that the interbeds, such as the Sila, thin with elevation. And that's all they're trying to say there, is that the higher go, or the more north we go, perhaps the more thinner that is. What the thickness is of the Sila interbed, who knows? But just as an example, to one of our pictures, taken on the 30th, this area right in here would be where the Sila interbed is. Right in there, and this is probably the sandstone portion of that. I'll get into that in a second. But right there is presumably the clay layer that we're talking about. And we've alluded to this area quite a bit in past videos, so it makes sense. All good stuff. Now, what is that? What is the Sila interbed made of? The Sila interbed is described as a tufaceous sandstone with parent sediments comprised of overbank deposits, river deposits, consisting of clay, silts, and sands, and varying concentrations of ash. What is tufaceous? Tufaceous, all that tufaceous is ash. And to be able to call it tufaceous, it has to be at least, that sandstone bed has to be at least over 50% tuff, or ash. That's all that's saying. So it's just basically sandstone mixed with tuff, ash, consolidated into that bed. We'll probably get into that more in the future as it applies, but just to finish up a little bit, weathering and thermal alteration of the ash was favorable for the development of orthogenic secondary clays such as illite, if we're trying to find out what the Sila bed clay actually is. Illite clays are usually considered alteration products of muscovite and are regarded as the mechanism where muscovite may eventually be altered into montmorillonite. We had a comment on that in one of the segments. Well done. I don't know if we've altered to montmorillonite yet, but it's certainly something that we will keep in mind. Moving on, the regional geologic mapping of the Rattlesnake Hills North Anticline reports that paroxysmal, which meaning middle, volcanic flows have inclinations from 12 to 20 degrees towards the south. We've pretty much demonstrated the bedding towards the south, but the 12 to 20 degrees is important because when we get into discussions, of the clays, and as we go on, I think there'll be further enlightenment about this. We get into the clays. The friction angle of that clay has to be less than whatever this bed, whatever the dip angles, they say in inclinations, but it's long word short, just the dip angle of the beds that are in Rattlesnake Ridge at the moment. That friction action has to be less for it to be less favorable for rapid failure. Makes sense? Makes sense. Moving on, we will discuss the landslide movement mechanism. This is obviously important stuff. The slide mass appears to be defined by a south-dipping basal surface coincident with the seal interbed between volcanic flows. We said that. And thus classified as a translational slide. We alluded to that before. We see no reason to change that opinion now. Good diagram in the report itself if you want to know what a transitional slide looks like. All the elements are there. Now this part becomes interesting. Ongoing movement of the detached translational slide block generally does not alter stability factors. Stability factors meaning the slope angle, distribution of weight, those kind of things. Hence, these slides tend not to be self-arresting and can translate for considerable distance for an indefinite time, which Cindy alluded to in the beginning. The one thing that caught my eye was that these slides tend not to be self-arresting. If we go back to the 29th Northwest Broadcasting article, Stephen Slaughter, the DNR geologist that's pretty much in charge of this issue, went on to state it could potentially run out a lot further, meaning time, or it could just stop. Landslides are really poorly understood, this one especially because we can't get in the subsurface. Makes sense. Slaughter said, we'll get to this a little bit, Slaughter said there is no sign that groundwater is lubricating the underside of the sliding layer, as we alluded to, of the basal rock. Water, we will agree on this, is normally a factor in landslides. And he closes by saying it could self-arrest potentially. We go back to the report, and they tend not to self-arrest. I don't know. That's an interesting point to take out of this. Just to go a little further about the movement mechanism, slumps, referred to as grabens, can develop along lateral margins. We have seen that. There is evidence of that. Real quick. Where's that? Yes. This is a mock-up I had for something else. But on the 30th, I mean, if it's faint, but I do see it. I do see the line going here and the line going here. Southwest facing. Beautiful. No, yes, graben structure, basically. This being a scarp, presumably. But if you look closely, you can see kind of the lip coming off of that and the lip coming up off of that. And they're getting forced together, and this area is going down slightly. Makes sense. Moving on. In conclusion on that, the most important factors controlling stability of translational landslides are the frictional shear strength, which we discussed at great length in previous videos, along the basal surface. We agree. And the dip, as I alluded to, inclination below horizontal of the basal surface, and the absence of groundwater pressures. Again, I think we've discussed that. I think we're all in agreement with the groundwater pressures as it stands right now. You can go back to the last video about where we talked about water and get a little bit more insight on that. I'm going to leave it at that. But yes, I think that's an issue that we're going to look here, and we are going to look, you know, the frictional shear strength. Yes, we're going to look at that as it applies to the clays, and the more information to get, the more information we can report on. And I'm sure that will be forthcoming as we go along. And if the, you know, of the groundwater, interesting topic. We are not going to claim to have a whole lot of data on this at the moment, but we are working on it. But on the 30th, again, we see these little discolorations, and we're gonna in blue, the blue hours for water in this case. We're gonna keep checking into this and see what's up with that, because that will change the equation, and we'll get to it in later segments probably, but the report alludes to that enough. We're going to certainly keep an eye on that, because we are a little skeptical there. You know, I think it goes on to just the geologic structure of the area, north, south, east, and west. I urge you to go through it in this section underneath. I think that maybe the best thing to take out of the south and west sides of the slide mass are unconstrained, and we'll get to that because the inner base is exposed. Daylights, I'll explain that, in the quarry high wall and on the west facing topographic slope above I-82 respectively. What they mean by that. Let's get back to that. Yes. Unconstrained meaning, yeah, you're seeing it. Daylighting, you can see if the sandstone bed is here, we can see the basalt flow. Daylighting here because we see joints. That's what they mean by that. It's a pretty simple process. Something I'm really going to start to take a look at. While this joining here seems pretty vertical, I'm a little interested in why I see daylighting on an angle. And I do see a little lift here. So I'm just things we're going to keep an eye on at this point. But we're going to stay on top of this particular aspect of the slide, in as much as it is buttressing or holding up, and making this a transitional landslide. This is a big key. If it is going to go slow, it's because of this area. Just something to keep in mind again. And just one other point, the reason that I brought up the groundwater, and this is a neat point to take out of it, although not confirmed by subsurface measurement. No, we don't have that. Poor water pressure, which we alluded to in the last video, along the basal sliding surface do not appear to be a factor in the slide. Okay. This conclusion is based on a lack of observed seepage from the quarry walls and from the natural slopes. We just demonstrated that there might be water. So, again, I don't know how long they had looked at it. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. They go on to say, although groundwater may not be sufficient to generate pore pressures, we agreed with that. At the elevation of the slip surface, I think that's important. Downward infiltration with high angle fracture zones, which we see, could eventually reach the basal surface, decreasing the mechanical shear strength of the clay minerals if present. So with that in mind, I think we'll stop there. We will break out another section the next time. But as I said, we will continue to look at the aspects as I reported them. You know, but generally speaking, this is a good document to have. This gives us talking points. This gives us a place of reference. And I think that's important going forward. So we're not just blasting theories out all over the place. I think it's important. If we're going to have something to talk about, I think we're going to have to stay within these particular constraints at the moment, and see where it takes us. So with that in mind, we thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all again real soon. Thank you so much.